everybody can mute real quick too. That'd be good. Hi everyone, and welcome to Week 7's Hangout, the end of Week 7, moving into Week 8, which is the final week of Contextual Electronics, which is kind of crazy, because it's not just the final week of one session, it's the final week of both sessions, and we're right down to it, and well, things still aren't working yet. But as I talked about last week, we will keep plugging along until this thing is up and running and working. So I've got a good feeling about overall how it's going to end up working in general. Obviously, we've had a lot of bodges and kind of moving things forwards, but I think it'll be a good final product. So today we have Gail, we have James, we have Margaret, and we have Nathan here. So welcome everyone. Why don't we work our way down the line? Gail, why don't you start and let us know how you're doing, and then we'll work our way down the line.
Well, I'm catching up. I've been away for a while, so I'm finally catching up. And so I decided to put get the DAC going, and I did get it going intermittently, but now it's like dead. And I discovered a whole bunch of other problems that I along the way, like my power wasn't I wasn't getting a V out that wasn't just wasn't high enough, and so ended up I had an inductor that was not functioning, and anyway, so I did all these other things. Oh, well, that's got to be it, and well, no, it wasn't it. So
right,
still dead. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the worst. Where you're like going through each step, and then after each one, you're like, "This is gonna be it. This has got to be it."
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. James, how about you?
Okay. I had a problem with the positive voltage power supply. I think the 110 ohm monitor or resistor divider, it burned out the output of the voltage regulator. I had a low resistance short between pins 1 and 2. In fact, it was reading around like 56 ohms, and replaced the component, and that fixed it. I have been leaving the heatsink off of it because it was just in the way, and I think the voltage divider in itself was just drawing too much current, and it burned up the chip.
So you're talking about the we had put in a 100 ohm and a 10 ohm in order. We did that to feed back through to the op-amp circuit. Is that correct?
It was the feedback into the Arduino analog input.
Right, but I think we had done that initially for the 110 in order to get into the op-amp to drive the op-amp, right, or the instrumentation amp. We fed that out, and I think right or back around or something like that.
22 and 23.
Yeah, right. But then there was a video where I switched those back to the original values of the 1K and the 3K.
Yeah, and I did that, but the damage was done.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you're saying that because during that time when it was the 110, that was the damage time.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now I've also fixed the negative voltage monitor by adding a op-amp in between that output and the analog input by just having a gain of -1. So it just inverts the magnitude and it works.
Yeah, because we have the split rails already, right? So you just use the ±12 rails?
Yeah. What I did is I had a bodge board. It's a perf board, added op-amp, and then just sort of perf boarded onto over your logo.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
And then you have the voltage is real easy to tap off. It's like right off from the inductors, or filter inductors.
Okay. So you didn't go through the bypass ones that were all the way over on the right side, right?
Yeah, I'm holding it back upside down, but yeah, that's the inductors.
Right. That's the incoming. Yeah, the incoming. I just meant how the other op amp, the one the 4870, The 4170 rather, that comes off those two linear regulators and has the bypass. You didn't do it there. You did it back by the ATX. You're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's a great idea. Yeah. That's. Did you add that to the suggested upgrades V2?
I will.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So as
Make
yeah.
sure it works.
Right. That's good. Good thinking. Yes, testing is good. So if people didn't see, we do have a running list of upgrades and fixes that need to happen in version 2, and it's just a thread. Add one thing at a time, basically, in order, and we'll basically work through those as we start doing the next version of the board. So that's been great, and people have been adding a lot of good stuff there, stuff that I missed, stuff that are suggested upgrades and stuff like that. Margaret, how about you? How are you doing?
Sorry about that. I was on mute to hold off the traffic. I'm having a blast. I put on the MCP 3901, but where I'm having problems is getting the solder off, with the solder wick, and I just don't seem to have the knack for that. So I'm either looking for helpful hints from you all, or I'll just keep practicing. But one of the problems I have is I try to take some of the solder off, and I take too much of it off, then I have to resolder, then it's back to being too much solder, and so I don't have a good feel for the amount of solder to put on for those itty-bitty, teeny-weeny chips. So.
Yeah. The thing that usually works for me is, if I do have a bridge between two pins,
yeah.
So if the two pins are like this and there's a bridge between them, usually laying the solder wick on top of the pins versus kind of like, we have like a space underneath where you could shove the solder wick underneath. Well,
yeah.
we need that solder to be underneath there still, so I kind of lay it on top and then just allow the capillary action to pull it out what it needs, from that bridge. Not necessarily.
Oh, that's smart. Yeah. Yeah, I was rubbing it down below, and it was, to your point, it was taking it out from all the pins and.
Right.
And
yeah, I did that at one point as well.
That was, but I thought that the flush mess. I was so glad to wait, and then watch the methods for doing it, and it made a lot of sense. The other fun thing is going through Tommy's Arduino sketches. He's been doing a great job. It's fun to learn from what he's been doing. He must be a pretty good software engineer. So, and to see his contribution, be able to use that's been really cool. So I haven't used it a lot. I've just been looking at it, and he's done a good job with that. So I'm pretty excited to start using Tommy's framework, and that might be a cool thing to keep as part of the class curriculum thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm depending on the kindness of software-centric people for that stuff. I am not a pro.
Oh, you're doing fine, and I think it's fun to watch, because the same mistakes we all make, which is, using a logical and versus a bitwise, and
right.
How
like watching a baby,
does that all the time. So, we just kind of wait for the next release of your video to see, okay, when do we get to that?
Let's watch what he gets himself into this week, right?
Oh yeah, it's been going great. The other concern I have is I have all these parts and I'm not even sure where they go, because I still seem to have all these bags of parts. So I must be doing something wrong. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I ordered too many. I don't know what's going on, but I seem to have bags I haven't opened.
Yeah. Well, we'll as we get into doing a spin as well, we'll probably be able to use those up. So that'll be good. Nathan, how about you?
Okay.
So this week, not so much soldering, more actually trying to get some other little bugbears I've had. One of them was for the Git repo stuff. I just couldn't get it to maintain sync with yours. Then finally, I figured it out this week, so I was happy about doing that.
What was it? Just for others. What was the sync?
So I did it, and then I promptly forgot it, of course. But I had to go to the command line and do a something you had to set another, like what I call a breakpoint, upstream breakpoint, and then I had to do the git fetch and something else, and then it replicated exactly what was in your.
Oh, you're moving the head. Is that what you mean? Like you're.
Yeah, something like that. I'm not up with the speak, but I had to make one that basically goes out, fetches yours, and scrubs it over the top of mine.
Oh, okay. So just so like each video you would actually go out and grab it and bring it back down, that kind of thing?
No, I guess once a week I'll just make because you do your sketches and you upload them, so I didn't get that latest folder until yesterday.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So small administration stuff that was bugging me, so I caught up. I have managed to do the first of the DAC sketches, and that looked like it worked fine. I've got a small question around. Well, I was measuring it on the Gabatronics, and then I had I bought myself a red potato measurement tool as well. But from time to time, I can see that the output sometimes skips, and it's 10 seconds for the same waveform before it switches to a new waveform. It's not consistent, but every now and then it just seems to skip.
Interesting. So you're saying like the DAC is throwing values out and then it misses one of those values that it's throwing?
No, the input to the DAC from the Arduino.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you were monitoring the spy commands?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. So are you actually watching each time it blips? Like, could it be a triggering issue where you're just missing the actual time that the waveform comes across your screen?
Yeah, I think so. I think when I look at all these things, you've got a complicated measuring thing, you've got the micro from the Arduino, and then we've got our circuit that we're building. Could be any one of those things that is throwing it. But I just thought, from my learning experience, you just can't trust one data point. I've got to do it many times, and then you get a picture for what it really is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. If it is the trigger, so I always had a big problem with triggering when I was getting started. I just didn't quite understand it, but it is good to play around with that stuff as well, because that actually becomes very, very important for, like as you move into other scopes as well, like the Pitaya as well. That's going to have a triggering scheme that's different. A lot of times that we default to the auto trigger, where it's just saying anytime there's any kind of blip, it'll just snap on and it'll take a measurement, right? But really, what we want to do is we want to set a level and actually have that as a controlled thing, because sometimes you want to measure like runt commands, right? Or you want to measure like other weird types of behavior, and like people like Alan Wolke on YouTube, he has a lot of good triggering videos as well. So
Interesting, good.
yeah, yeah. So but yeah, definitely do post if you do continue to see that behavior, because the skipping actually is quite interesting. I'm going to give an update on my stuff. I was struggling all day today. So last night I posted the program I wrote for the 3901. Obviously, it was very poor programming. But today I've been doing some testing, and I've been making videos, obviously, and I'm pretty sure that my part's broken. So at first I found that my analog input VDD was not connected, and I'll post videos about that as well. And then I basically, though, thinking through the MCP 3901, how do we really tell if it's alive or not? And the only thing I can really think of is the MOSI line, right? So the MISO line, master in, slave out, right? That's the only way we can really tell if the thing's alive. And so I've been throwing commands at it, I've been throwing different programs at it, borrowing people's code, just to see if there's any way I can get it up and running. And I think at this point, I'm going to have to replace that chip. Now, last time I didn't use hot air. This time I will definitely use hot air. But it is entirely possible that I just killed it with heat when I was soldering it down. So, yeah, I'll have to probably do a resoldering of that thing. So that's where I'm at. So, what kind of questions do we have this week?
Hey, Chris, just on your when you showed your video.
Margaret, I'm going to let Nathan go first, and then we'll come back to you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. I was watching, Chris, when you were handling your MCP 3901. Your fingers are all over it. You're not concerned about the static consequences there as well?
Yeah, I should be. I'm very, very sloppy about that kind of stuff, and I get yelled at all the time about it. So it very much could be that. My personal opinion is that for a long time, static was a big issue, and static is still a big issue. But basically what happens now is that every time that a semiconductor manufacturer makes anything with a FET input now, they put protection diodes, and basically a lot of that stuff's built in. Not that that's an excuse, but that's kind of the tact I take, and I may be paying the price for it right now. So that is a good question, though. I was all over it, but I'm notoriously sloppy with that, because the other reason is that usually I'm using, you know, analog components. Those things are meant to be robusto, you know. So, Margaret, what did you have?
Yeah, I'm going to leave my video off because I'm having trouble with the video.
Okay.
I probably should have asked this, and you may not want to answer it, but what made you pick the parts you picked for the Bench Buddy? How did the components come about? And then my second question to that is, how are you going to use the Bench Buddy?
Well, reason we picked the parts, I guess we could go back to session 1A, and there were some things in there. I think probably a better question is, you know, it's probably about the functionality that I wanted to implement, right? I wanted something with plus or minus 10 volts input, right? Usually you don't get that, especially in Arduino. You don't get the bipolar nature. You don't get protected input with a variable gain. You can't do high level and low level type stuff. So that really drove the 3901. The DAC, the 4801, that was basically driven by wanting, you know, some kind of current control, and then the rest of it, the reason we chose those parts specifically was mostly cost, if we remember. That was usually we're sorting by price and trying to find stuff through there. I'm pretty impressed with the 3901 as a part. I mean, obviously my ability to find the right footprint for it was less than stellar, but yeah, so I do like it as a part, but.
Well, no, I'm not concerned at all with the parts. I think that that's been great. It goes back to the things you were talking about, like you wanted plus or minus 10 volts input, the bipolar, because like you're saying, you know, that is something, you know, that I've dealt with the op amp, as you see, and using a charge pump that you don't get with the Arduino. So that kind of level of stuff, I'm interested in why you picked what you picked as far as putting the Bench Buddy together as a project. Yeah,
right. It's like a multi-tool. Yeah. So in terms of what I'll use it for,
yeah.
Hey, Dave, if you can mute. Thanks for coming in. But you know, using it as a multi-tool, basically, I'm gonna actually put it into my my kit for my travel kit, and I'll just bolt it right into that thing. And that's kind of that's not what I had thought of initially, but you know, just having that kind of thing on the road, basically not having to take, you know, a bench meter with me, right? Something that actually can do these low-level measurements, right? Like a DMM is great, right? You can do a wide range of stuff, but you can't necessarily do low-level measurements and stuff like that. So, and there's just interesting learning opportunities there as well. So I'll probably use it for that kind of stuff. I'm guessing that I'll use it as just you know, a one-off. You know, when I need a relay, right? That's always you know, you're always looking for a relay kind of thing. So, but yeah, that's about as good as I got.
Thank you,
Dave. What have you been up to? We already went through everybody else. What's your status this week? Dave? No? Okay, no Dave. All right, what other questions do we have? James, Gail, got any questions? I did open up the Q&A app as well. Sorry I didn't have that open to start with. So if people are watching and aren't necessarily in the video, we can take questions there as well.
Well, while we wait on questions, did you recommend a solder paste to use?
No, I actually did not find a solder paste that I liked. Mostly because I was looking on Amazon. I think I need to find new shopping sources as well, because Amazon finds some cheap stuff, but it's just, you know, really you got to go to the best places to go are the ones that are going to have industrial type equipment, right? So good solder paste, good solder, stuff like that.
Okay, because I'll be interested to know what you choose for that when you get to that. And do you then put it in the refrigerator? Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, you really should. It usually when you open it, it kind of has a shelf life of about 6 weeks, I think it is. So that's kind of, yeah. You could probably keep it longer, but it basically starts to lose efficacy. So I think because of the evaporation of the flux internally. So.
Got it. Thank you.
Hey Chris, have you done any more investigation on this phantom power issue which some people seem to be having? I'm getting you a bit. I haven't been using the USB Adreno plugged in and using the console because of it.
Yeah. So one of the things that I did find today is that something was wrong with the USB cord that I was using. So that actually was probably a separate issue, but I think I probably burned out that cord at one point. I'm really not sure about the phantom power though. It might be a short, it might have been something else, but basically using this new cord, I don't actually see that. So it's hard to kind of troubleshoot, especially because I'm definitely throwing that cord away. It was a very bad cord. So what I do see though, even with this new cord, is I do see pretty spiky noise coming out of my laptop. So that's probably just because crappy switcher that they're expecting it to be crappy in my laptop, that kind of thing. Either that or I broke it at some point. So no, kind of the investigation kind of is continuing in that one. I do think that it's probably worth it to have a power supply, or sorry, like a separate device, right? So if you have like a USB hub that you can plug into that isn't powered from your computer, that's probably the safest thing to do, just so you don't hurt your computer. But I'm not really sure I'm not sure what it is yet.
Yeah, I guess further down the track, when I get some more experience up, I was thinking of just whacking in a little OLED on those lines and just using the print commands out to that instead.
Yeah, right. That is kind of the ultimate goal, is to move over to some kind of display device, so it's self-contained, right? That's like marketers asking what it's going to be used for. I'm going to be using it, separate from my computer as well. I'd like to use it just on the road as some kind of interface device. So.
Okay, I got one, Chris.
Okay.
Going with Margaret's question about selecting parts, I was curious when you first started the class. It seems like you were pretty quick on selecting components. I had the initial impression that it's kind of like a chef, and you're picking specific ingredients to make your creation. And it kind of turns out you're just going through the supermarket and just grabbing stuff off the shelf and kind of quickly going through, more like a commando raid than a
precision attack.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, and usually that is the case, right? So thinking about how I've done part selection in the past, I would get 3 to 4. I'd find a group of stuff that I like, 3 to 4 parts. So like an ADC, I might find 3 or 4, and then I'd get dev boards and I'd go and test each one. I'd throw commands at it, see how it operates, see how I like it. And then from there, I would push that into a design, right? That's kind of the difference between this and that, right? Because that could be a whole course in itself where it's just looking at and comparing designs, right, that are already existing, right? So the dev boards and stuff like that. But there's also, those dev boards are often, usually those dev boards are given to you when you're designing in parts, right? Because these vendors want you to design stuff in.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going out and buying them yourself, it becomes I guess if you're going straight for the dev boards, that becomes quite expensive. We could have also gone out and designed for 4 boards with just ADCs on them, right, and just done that. And that's a good exercise as well, but again, cost and complexity and time and everything else. So that's why it seemed like supermarket sweep. It was kind of a shot in the dark, and some parts have worked and some parts have not.
And going with this experience, what would not this learning experiment, but how would employers see this? Would you see yourself like, well, I guess I better update my resume, I made way too many expensive mistakes, or is this just normal stuff that happens?
Well, in my experience, this is, so like I said, like I've always been saying, this is a prototype, right? So if I have an employer who's looking over my shoulder and saying, whoa, you picked the wrong part, you swapped out the miso mosi pins, it's like, if you expect me to do this right the first rev, if someone does it right the first rev, they're doing something really well, but I've never done it perfectly the first rev, and usually, I see a lot of bodge wires on my first rev stuff. So maybe that's just me, or maybe that's but I think it's very normal to have multiple revs of a board, especially as you're moving towards like a more professional, like a manufacturable solution. And the ones who are doing it in fewer revs, oftentimes you'll see like I saw a statistic like something like 40% or 60% of cell phone designs are actually reference designs, right? So they're pulling in, they go to a data sheet or a reference design, they grab the whole thing and they throw it onto their board. And they go to another data sheet, they grab the whole thing and they throw it onto their board. And there's really no play in there. We looked at some of that stuff, but basically they're pulling entire chunks of solutions because of that quick time stuff. So.
Well, my place of employment, they do have design issues, but it's usually a statistical outliner. But I've also wondered on bigger projects, is it broken up into little teams, and like you would have the analog group doing their one little thing, and then you'd have the digital group doing another thing, you'd have the software group doing something else, and then you just sort of hope it kind of comes together on the first or second prototype. I mean, is that how it works, or is there course corrections as the project progresses?
Well, I only have my experience to draw upon, but when I was at Keithley, we did that kind of thing. It'd be like usually there'd be like two analog people where they'd have a couple pages that belong to them. Someone would be doing the power supply stuff, someone would be doing the measurement stuff, or maybe there'd be drive circuitry, that kind of thing. And then then the digital pages belong to the digital engineers, FPGA guys, and then basically you're trying to meet with the software people to make sure everything's included, but. Yeah, I mean, first or second prototypes, I guess, again, it depends on timelines, right? So if you have a really strict timeline, you're not allowed to do first or second prototypes, but the places I've always worked, the industrial places, they've always been 18-month design cycles or so, with the expectation that getting a product to market is going to be a couple $1,000,000, like, in terms of prototypes and pilot runs and stuff like that, because then it's supposed to last for about 20 years. It's going to charge a lot for it. So, it's going to really depend on where you are and what kind of designs you're working on. The places I've worked at have always been a lot of iterations, trying to get stuff right, and pretty slow. So.
Also, picking precision components like current offset on the op amps. Can this particular design, can we get away with cheaper parts and use software? Just have cow factors. You do your ICT measurements during the manufacturing side, and then you just have your coefficients. I mean, is that how a manufacturing group would go with it, or would they consider that the BOM the parts are cheap enough and robust enough to go as is?
Usually when there's like precision stuff like that, again, my experience has been going with the best spec part you can get away with in terms of the BOM. Usually it starts with the BOM cost, and then you say, okay, what can I get for that? And then you kind of go and you play around with the numbers and playing back and forth and that kind of thing. In terms of going to a cheaper or to a lower spec part that is adjustable, it's really going to depend on the application. So in this case, we have the instrumentation amp that we built. We decided to build it versus buying an instrumentation amp because those are really expensive parts. But the reason there's expensive parts in there actually are not because of the op amps internally. It's actually because of the matched resistors internally. And so we probably could have gotten away with a cheaper op amp as long as we had solid resistors. It would be even better if we actually matched out those resistors. So like you can even buy, I know Linear Technology has a part where it's actually their op amp it's a differential amplifier, right? It has internal matched resistors that are like super awesome. They just turn off the op amp and they sell you the resistors in the package. So if you have that kind of thing, the op amp really doesn't matter at that point. It's mostly going to be about the those parts. But what it ultimately comes down to is doing an error budget, kind of getting all the way through your design, seeing what has the biggest contribution to error, especially over time and temperature, and then kind of optimizing for that. Because like I said, if it is the resistors that are that key component that are going to be that drive your accuracy and precision, then you better be paying for good resistors. No amount of calibration is going to matter at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it really comes down to, is doing that calculation and then making that cost trade-off.
Okay. Has anybody had a publishable code for the ADC? Has anybody put anything out that kind of standalone works?
Ilko did that. He has some code that he was just pulling stuff out of the data registers. He was just pulling it with the default. So the default setup internal to the MCP 3901, and then he was just streaming data out. That's actually how I borrowed that code as just like a sanity check, and I don't know if it's on GitHub, but it is in the forum in his build log, and I think some people have stuff on GitHub as well. I haven't gone out and looked at it yet, though.
Okay. Did anybody have any trouble with the crystal oscillator? It tended to work pretty robustly for me. I'm using an 8 megahertz crystal. Got out of the junk drawer, and some ceramic surface mount caps, 0805,
Mm-hmm.
and
I think I saw your picture of that
on the back. Yeah, there's a nice little picture, and then use hot melt glue to just hold it in place.
That's right. I saw that. That's a good tip as well. Using some hot glue. Mine looks good. I don't know what kind of levels you were looking at in yours. I had about a 1.5 volt sine wave at 4 megahertz. I bought that 4 megahertz crystal.
Yeah.
But with 47 picofarad caps on either side. Looks good. I don't know anyone else. Nathan, Margaret, Gail, David. Not there yet.
Not there yet.
No.
I'm not there yet.
Okay. James, you're leading the way, man. Leading the charge. It's like I've said in the past. It's weird for I was looking at like Ilko's code and Bry and who else was it? Wes. And they're posting this stuff, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, they got their code working, right? And then I'm like looking at it, and I'm like, holy crap, that was last week or like a week and a half ago. It's just like people do what it's just different levels where people are and stuff, and now I'm in the middle of the pack, so yep. David, are you able to talk now or no?
I can talk, but no video.
Okay, yeah. Well, how's it going for you?
Pretty good. I've been waiting to mount the DAC because I got a hot air gun, and then I had to wait on the paste.
Okay.
But I got that last night, so I'm going in.
All right, pasty. Which paste did you end up getting? Actually, Margaret was asking about that.
There's a reseller on Amazon that repackages some Kester paste in a smaller syringe.
That's nice. Could you post that link somewhere? Maybe. Well, yeah. Actually, if you could post that on your thread or your build log, that'd be great. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. It has some mixed reviews, but I think some of the bad reviews are people that like held on to it too long before they used it. So okay. I'll put how it works.
What did you get?
Solder paste in a little like syringe.
So the reason that it's good that it comes like that is usually you think about customers who are buying solder paste, they're buying tubs of it, right? And so buying it in a syringe uses a big markup on that. So basically, the seller that Dave bought from took a big bucket of it at their house, they put it into a syringe, and then they sell it separately. And it's a good business, I guess. As long as it shows up okay, that's what it really comes down to. So I would try and, if there are multiple sellers, try and find one close to home. I would not get one from. Don't wait for the slow boat shipping from China or anything like that. Make sure it's getting there quickly, and ask them when.
From somewhere random like Illinois or something.
Oh yeah, well, people in Illinois they like soldering too, man.
Yeah, but it was Continental, so.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So Chris, the link to the hot air gun doesn't actually go.
Oh, yes.
It goes to a spool of wire.
Yes.
So, um,
the spool of wire that I actually ended up mistakenly ordering, even though I had bought it from Element 14 as well, or Newark. So the brand is Kendall, and I actually got it on Amazon. So it's a Kendall hot air gun. I think if you search for that, you'll probably or hot air rework station on Amazon. Yeah, 2-in-1. So it is the top link, $95.99. Ships Prime, has pretty good reviews. The base for the soldering iron is plastic. It's kind of crap, but you know, the tube is pretty good. The tips for the actual hot air gun are kind of huge. Like usually you can get a wide variety of them. I usually like a pretty narrow tip for those kind of things, so you get real directed hot air. But they have, you know, like bulky, huge. But I mean, that thing heats up quick and it works fine for me, so I'm happy with it so far.
Yeah, I can't resist, but hot air guns, pace, what's going on? I must be old school.
Well, you're saying your soldering iron or no way? Is that what you mean?
No, I only have a soldering iron, and you know, I've never used a hot air gun, but don't seem to be having as much problems as others. But just had to get in there and.
Okay, well, yeah, you know, I had an inordinate amount of trouble with the pins, with the drag soldering and everything else. I think some of that was actually the no clean flux that I had previously. I did get some better flux now, and it was a lot easier when I got regular flux. So I do feel bad for suggesting the other one, but you know, it's $10 difference. But the hot air stuff, I had suggested that big bulky one as just a way for, you know, also for, you know, removing pins if you have to do multi-pin removal type of stuff. Having hot air is actually quite useful for that kind of stuff. But then also for doing, you know, for doing fine pitch stuff, it can really help. You know, it's solder paste and hot air. Now, another thing I do is normally I don't use solder paste. I've used solder paste 2 or 3 times in my life, but it was actually with a reflow oven, right? So it was actually a full-scale reflow oven. I was actually applying paste and stuff like that. Usually for this kind of stuff, I'll just pre-tin the pins, and then basically usually that's enough with some flux on there as well to basically solder on the parts, assuming there's enough actual solder on the pins when I start heating it up. But if you heat up both sides, you usually can get, you know, you can kind of do a little rocker and kind of push it down into the existing solder. So usually that's what I'll do. So I don't usually get paste, but it is nice to have.
On the airflow, I had to use that for L4. That's the inductor for the boost converter on the LED driver.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, I saw that.
But unless somebody has a technique of doing it with the regular soldering iron. But again, I can't get the circuit to work, and I don't see anything wrong with your layout, and we're using the suggested parts from was it Diodes Inc.
Yeah.
The vendor. Has anybody had any luck getting the LED driver to work?
I'm not there yet personally. So have you? So James, have you been talking to the 3901 yet, or no? You have not been talking to 3901 yet.
I've just tried a couple of code, but I couldn't get it to work, and so I'll have to steal somebody else's code.
Okay.
I hadn't had any luck getting it to work.
Okay.
But I feel pretty confident that it's a software issue, not a hardware. Knock on wood, but
you know, I've said that a lot of times in my past, and you know who hates when you say that to them is the software people. No, it's not the hardware. It's definitely your fault. It's
Hey, James, why do you think it's the software, not the hardware? I mean, how did you make sure on the hardware? Just curious, because I'm new to it.
well, I'm pretty confident that it works on some level because of the oscillator. Now, I hadn't verified the MISO or the data coming right back out to no, I guess that would be MISO. If it's not producing anything, then it's a dead chip. or damaged in some method. But as I said, I was still trying to work on getting the software to work, and I'm going to try somebody else's code and see where that goes.
Well, I'm just curious, just from a learning perspective. So I'm probably off base, but the crystal that guy would handle with the chip select, wouldn't it? That's what I was assuming. That it was kind of like kind of a heartbeat.
No, the crystal actually drives. Oh, go ahead. You go ahead, James. That's fine.
Well, yeah. Usually, chips they'll go into a standby mode for low current draw, and then either the chip select, and then the crystal oscillator should start. And there's probably a spec somewhere that you have to allow so many milliseconds after the crystal settles, or it may be continuously on.
Yeah, I don't think this is for power meters. Really, this chip is not meant to be low power. So.
Okay, so the clock. So in the SPI, right, with the clock.
Yep.
When I'm the slave in the case of the MCP 3901, where's the clock coming from? Is that coming from
the Arduino?
Arduino, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So the only traffic at all coming over SPI, to your point, Chris, is the MISO.
No. So the MOSI, right, master out, slave in, is the actual data line, right? If you were looking at this on the actual MCP 3901, that would be what hooks into the SDI, which is serial data in.
Yeah, but that's coming from the Arduino.
Oh, correct. Yep. Yeah, as is S-Clock.
The only output is MISO, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So the only way to really check if the hardware is bad, to your point, you did the continuity check,
mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? And so the pins were down correctly. They
correct.
Connected.
Yeah, I did the continuity and X-ray check, so I'm pretty confident.
Yeah, James says X-ray. That's not fair. That's cheating.
What's with this X-ray? You have an X-ray machine?
Where I work has
He's Superman.
one.
You didn't know this? He's got X-ray vision.
I heard rumors of such. Unbelievable.
He solders with his I-beams.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, it's a really nice toy to have. Luckily, I didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But we've found surprising a lot of uses for the X-ray machine, not just for inspecting solder connections.
Yeah. Counterfeit parts, right? That's always a good one. When you look inside, you're like, hey, there's no silicon in here.
Actually, we've seen some where it had no bond wires inside chips. And it's also pretty good for seeing EOS damage where the bond wires acting like fuses. And you'll see where it carbonized, I guess, inside the cavity. It looks like smoke.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, so Margaret, back to your question though, with the serial stuff. Yeah, if you don't see anything coming back on MISO, that's about it. But you were asking about the oscillator as well. The oscillator actually should only drive, I believe, should only drive the ADC, right? That actually needs an oscillator to do it. The serial stuff though, that's actually a state machine, right? So as it gets a clock on because it's not active unless it's getting S-clock. As it gets a clock, it's actually running through its logic, right, and actually clocking data in or out. And,
that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the ADC without the oscillator, it can't run at all. It can't. It just won't run because it doesn't have basically a heartbeat going on.
Yep.
Right. And I think Wes was doing some stuff because Wes was one of the guys that found the clock or the oscillator was missing to start with, and I think he was trying to talk to the registers. I don't remember if he did it without the crystal attached.
Okay.
It should work for a state machine.
You'd think so if there's power and if it's getting all the correct signals, it should go through there. But sometimes there's internal checks as well. I was thinking about today when I found out that my power wasn't connected to the analog side. It's like, well, thinking the digital side should be working, right, if it has power to that. But sometimes, chips will have monitors so that if one goes down, it just says, no, I'm not working anymore. Instead of having an error, it just shuts off. So it really depends on the internal architecture and how that's working.
Another feature I have confidence that it's working, the reference voltage out seemed to be doing something. It was like 2.3 something volts.
Yeah, I saw that on mine as well. So, but even that should probably be, if you have usually what the references look like internally. If you have a rail, right? Usually what it'll have a current source, and then it'll have a Zener diode, and basically it's trying to pull current down through the Zener diode. That sets up a voltage, and then that Zener diode is meant to be stable enough that it actually uses that as the reference voltage. That's normally what's internal to ADCs if there are internal references. And even in references themselves, usually it's the same kind of thing, a current source and a Zener diode. That sets up that voltage.
Let's see.
Any other questions, people?
Oh, I have noticed that the instrumentation amp has limited bandwidth. It's not up to the spec of the chip, which was several megahertz.
Yeah.
In the instrumentation amp, I think it's like maybe 450 kilohertz is the upper limit before it goes below unity.
Yeah. That's been from the beginning. Basically based on the what we expect to see on the input there. So I think the chip can do 64 kilosamples per second in a streaming mode if we coming back from the ADC. But especially as you move up in gain, you mentioned unity gain, but as you move up in gain, your bandwidth starts to fall off. You can't do as fast of a thing. You can't do as fast as input signals. So it's really going to depend on that.
Let's see. I'll let somebody else talk.
Okay. Actually, Jim, in the Q&A, he mentioned when we were talking about the phantom power, Pedro did post a table of values. I did look at that, but I haven't investigated on my own board yet. I think it was it was some non-standard pins. I don't remember why, but basically what he did is he went through step by step, and I think he shorted out one pin at a time, and in doing so, he actually measured what the voltage was coming through the actual Arduino. So that could be indicative. Other questions? Well, I have, so I don't know if you guys saw this week, I started doing Google Helpouts. So it is basically, paid coaching session type of thing. So going past this week, if people are interested in that kind of thing, obviously some people still have lessons they purchased as part of the extra tier. But if other people are interested in that kind of thing, I do have that available, and it's an easy way. We can, obviously I'll keep talking on here, but if you want, individual sessions and you don't have any left over, we can do that kind of thing going forwards. And it's also mostly for people that are, outside the course that might want reviews of their projects and stuff like that. So that's just another thing that is available. Like I said, we are in the last week, so but it's not really the last week. So, like James mentioned, we haven't even gotten to the LED stuff yet. So, if it takes us a week and a half to get through the code on the MCP, we'll get through that, and then the LEDs will be after that. I am going to be out of town for the whole week after next week, but I will be able to refer on stuff at least, and then I'll come back and be able to do work as well.
So when does this project actually end? What's the point? Do we redo everything? Do we make all the corrections? And
I mean, that's what I'm thinking going forward. So we had talked also about getting into teams as well, because some people have different things they want to do with it, right? So some people want to move away from having Arduino at all, right? And I think we could probably self-organize at that point, and people that want to meet and talk about next level changes, right? We could some people could do that kind of thing. Other people could just update this board, right? Obviously, everybody has the ability to make these changes now, but then what we could do is we could also do group orders or that kind of stuff as well. I think that I'm personally interested in getting the size of this thing down smaller, just because of the cost of the board at 4 layers and 15 square inches is pretty intense unless we do a larger order. But we can do a large order once we respin the board as well. So, short answer though, I'm not really sure what happens next. You know, the course. You know, if no one else did anything else, I'm going to redo the board for me, and I'll share it with everyone obviously. But yeah, I don't know. What were you thinking?
I was just curious.
I was
seems
thinking you should do another course. You know, your next project.
Oh yeah, that's a ways off.
Design a space station.
Right. What was that, Gail?
I said that's a good idea. Have another course. Just have
Oh yeah, I'll do that
Never end.
eventually. Yeah, we'll see.
Chris, on your Helpouts, do you have the 9th through the 12th available, but other dates aren't? Is that just because you haven't planned ahead, or?
Yeah, that's just yeah. I set a schedule a week out, so.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
So is the Helpouts, are they specific, or is it something like other people in the industry that are having trouble with the 3901 chip?
No, the Helpouts is really just generic. So it's basically YouTube had contacted me saying, "Do you want to do Helpouts?" Helpouts are basically a generic platform for basically offering people help on certain things with, it's usually paid help. And so I did it so far I've had one person. He basically for an hour we talked about his project. We went over some protection circuitry that he's been wondering about, and we just kind of chatted about that stuff for an hour. So that's kind of what I had imagined going forward. Not specific to BenchBuddy or anything else. I'm just saying that if you guys want to talk about projects later on, that's another thing I can do as well. So as you go into other projects and stuff like that.
No NDAs involved?
Nope.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't. I think if I borrowed someone's idea or stole someone's idea, I don't even have time to. I would never have time to do anything with it anyway. So. And I wouldn't.
No, I like the feature. It's I only started into this stuff late last year, and on Tindy there was a guy there that also offered help, not real time, but when I was searching the internet, it's very hard to find knowledgeable people on subjects and then try and tee up and do some real time discussions with them. So I like the idea.
Yeah. I mean, I do too. I think that I'm getting into Python now, and I could see and there's a lot of people that offer Python help, right? But sometimes you just want to talk to someone, right? That's what it comes down to. Is eventually at some point, I don't understand this page I'm reading. Just having that check against what you're seeing. Does it actually make sense? Can you actually get a real answer? That's usually what the value of it is, at least to me.
Well, couldn't you just call the applications engineer and have them hammer it out for you, or would they listen to you since you're small fry, or how does that work?
Oh, you saying for this kind of stuff, like for MCP 3901, or for any part you're saying?
Yeah, like if you're having an issue, can you just call the vendor and say, "Hey, I'm having an issue with X," and I don't know how it works in the real world. I mean, do you have to have some kind of marketing agreement with them beforehand, or do you just call them up and see if they're available?
It kind of used to work like that. Usually, you used to be able, Jim Williams was like this famous apps engineer. He used to publish his phone number. You could call his desk, right? And that's how it used to work. These days, because of cutbacks and everything else, almost always, if you call into a generic help number for like TI, they're gonna just tell you go to the forums. That's what they say every single time. And a lot of times, for what you need, forums are that kind of thing. But in my experience, unless you're spending hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars a year, you're usually not getting many people's attention, and that sucks, right? Especially if you're trying to learn. But that's also based on them having however many customers, and they have to make their time worth it as well. So. So the answer is usually no. Usually you cannot do that. With smaller companies you can, but it's usually difficult.
Okay, well, the reason I'm asking this is my place of employment.
Mm-hmm.
They usually have agreements with vendors, and so you just send them samples, and then they would do the curve trace and the CSAM, which they're looking for delamination on the die.
Mm-hmm.
If you overheat it, it starts separating from the paddle, and they call that delamination.
Okay.
Or they look at the wire bonds and they decap it. They'll do the photonic emission tests. All this extra special stuff that's necessitate to figure out the root cause of what my people are having on the production line.
Yeah.
And they'll go along with that because we're kind of their back-end quality control for the vendor.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because we're finding problems that they should have caught on their final test.
Right. But in terms of small businesses usually being able to do that, usually they are just users, not that. So that actually makes a lot of sense as an agreement, but I believe that's very uncommon. Usually it's more money based, in my opinion, in my experience. So that's great that you get that though. it's friggin' awesome.
Yeah, real nice pictures, and usually I've been pretty lucky that the issues that I have on the production line are really the passive components. The ICs really don't cause that much of a problem.
Robusto.
Okay. And the worst component I would categorize are electrolytic caps.
Oh yeah.
And it's something they never teach you in school on all the quirks that caps can introduce in a production line.
Well, you do notice that we don't have any electrolytics on this design either, so.
Yeah, but if we used, like for example, the ceramic caps, they have piezoelectric characteristics. If you start hitting the board with a hammer, it'll cause problems with the instrumentation amp.
That's right. You know what else happens when you hit a board with a hammer? Lots of stuff.
Well, that's the robustness test, right?
Robusto, yes. So, anyone else have? We're kind of winding down here. Anyone else have other issues this week or questions or anything like that? Okie dokes. Well, we will do one more hangout. One more guaranteed hangout next week, Saturday probably. I'll be calling in from San Diego, or Phoenix, or wherever the hell I am. And that'll probably be mid-morning kind of thing, but or mid-morning out there, probably like 1 or 2 p.m. Eastern time. So if there's any questions before then, obviously you have the forum, and obviously we'll keep going past the hangout. But yes, thank you all for showing up today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Talk to y'all soon.
All right, bye.
Ciao.
Yeah, thanks.